In this lesson, we're going to learn how to divide polynomials using a new method called synthetic division. Now, when you're using synthetic division, the reason it's taught after long division is long division can be used for any problem. Synthetic division can only be used when the divisor, or what you're dividing by, is a linear factor. So what that means is whatever you're dividing by has to start with x. It can't be x squared, x cubed, etc. It would need to start with an x. And then it would be x plus or minus a number. Your first step is to write down the coefficients of whatever the dividend is. So in this example, the dividend is 2x cubed plus 6x squared plus 29. Now notice, remember, you always want to see if they skip any terms. So here, after x cubed, should be x squared, then x before the 29. So since they skipped the x, remember you would want to put a 0 placeholder in its place. And we talked about that with the long division. So what you do is you draw a box, and in that box, kind of like an L though, you put the coefficients, which are the numbers in front. So here we put the 2, the 6, the 0, then the 29. And then the x plus 4, what you do is you take this number and you're going to put it in front here. But when you do that, you need to change the sign. So instead of putting a positive 4 there, we would put a negative 4. Your steps then are to bring down the first coefficient. So here they bring down the 2. And after that, this little negative 4 that we wrote, we're going to use for the whole problem. We're going to be multiplying it by everything that we get down here. So we do negative 4 times 2, which is negative 8. Notice how I wrote that. So now it's like combining like terms. 6 minus 8 is negative 2. Then we repeat. So now negative 2 times negative 4 is positive 8. So here we're adding 8. Then 8 times negative 4 is negative 32. If you combine those, you get negative 3. When you're writing your final answer, you're going to use these coefficients. Your final one is your remainder. If it's 0, you don't need to include it in your answer. Now, when you're writing your final answer, your leading number is going to have a degree 1 lower than the original problem. So here, notice how it started with cubed. In our final answer, we're going to start it with squared. So it's going to be 1 lower than the original problem. And the reason that happens is because, remember, you're dividing. So when you're doing x to the third power divided by x, you're getting x squared. So it does go 1 lower. So let's go ahead and practice some problems using this synthetic division method. So here I have a problem, 6x squared minus 16 minus 47x divided by x minus 8. I can use synthetic division because we're dividing by just x minus 8. So I'm going to make sure that first it's in the correct order. So after x squared should be x, then our constant. So I have 6x squared. Next should then be the minus 47x before the minus 16. So you need to make sure it's in the correct order first. Here they didn't skip anything, so I didn't have to put any zeros. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my synthetic division. I'm going to do my L. And I'm going to put those coefficients inside. On the outside, I'm going to take this negative 8, and I'm going to change the sign. So when I write it over here, it's a positive 8. Now I'm ready to start dividing. So I bring down my 6, then 6 times 8 is 48. So since it's positive, I'm adding that. Here, negative 47 plus 48 is a positive 1. Then I repeat, 1 times 8 is positive 8. Negative 16 plus 8 is negative 8. Now I have enough to start writing my answer. Since this problem started with an x squared, if I go 1 lower, my final answer is going to start with x to the imaginary 1. So I have 6x to the first, then a positive 1, and then my remainder is negative 8. So I'm going to put minus 8 over, and remember this is always our denominator in our remainder. So I have 6x plus 1 minus 8 over x minus 8. And remember this 1 can be imaginary. In our next problem, it starts with an x cubed. After x cubed is normally x squared, then x, then our constant. So here I have 2x cubed plus 2x squared minus 1x. But normally after that, there's a number that doesn't have a letter. Here, since they skipped that, I'm going to put a 0 placeholder. So when I set up my L, I have 2, 2, negative 1, and 0. And then here, if I change the sign, instead of positive 1, I'm going to put a negative 1 here. I bring down my first one, and now I start multiplying. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. 0 times negative 1 is 0. Negative 1 plus 0 is negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Remember, this last one here is going to be our remainder. So now I'm ready to start writing my answer. Since the original problem started with an x cubed, my answer is going to start with an x squared, then x, then the constant. So I have 2x squared plus 0x minus 1. And then my remainder is a positive 1 over x plus 1 for this problem. In your final answer, you don't have to leave the 0 there. Remember, it was just a placeholder. So I could just write 2x squared minus 1 plus 1 over x plus 1. We're going to practice one more problem. So on this next problem, this one, the highest one, is x to the 4th. So I'm going to start rewriting it. So after x to the 4th should be x cubed, then x squared, then x, then our constant. So here I'm going to put the 1x to the 4th first. Notice there's no x cubed, so I'm going to put a 0 placeholder for that one. Then after that would be the 5x squared, then the minus imaginary 1x, then the minus 8. So I'm just ordering it in descending order, starting with the x to the 4th, then x cubed, then x squared, then our constant after the x. And I'm just filling in those coefficients there. If there's anything they skipped, I put a 0. So I'm ready to set up my L. So I have 1, 0, 5, negative 1, negative 8. And here I'm going to change this to a positive 1. Now I can bring down my 1 and start. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 times 1 is 6. Negative 1 plus 6 is 5. And 5 times 1 is 5. Negative 8 plus 5 is negative 3. Remember, this last term is our remainder. Since our original problem started with an x to the 4th, our answer is going to start with an x cubed. Then we'll have x squared, then x, then our constant. So I'm just going to fill in the coefficients. 1x cubed, 1x squared, 6x, then I have a constant of 5, and my remainder is a negative 3. And then just remember in your final answers, these ones can be imaginary. They don't have to be there.